sexually powerful women.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live on Twitch every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. You can support this project in a variety of ways. Just go to echoplexmedia.com, click that support tab, find your favorite. I recommend the memberships through eplex.store, but you can make your own decisions. I'm producer Dave, and you can find me accidentally looking directly into one of the powerful lights behind me right before the show and not being able to really see that well because there are dots in my field of vision.
And I am HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social.
Remember that scene in Ghostbusters where they're like, don't look directly at the trap, and he's like, I looked at the trap, Ray. That's what I feel like right now. A little discombobulated. So before we get started here, I do want to kind of, a lot of times on this show, the material is troubling, but I think today, particularly troubling. We're going to watch Andrew Gold, who we've found, and I have a particular distaste for him because when we found out that an internet friend of ours, Doug, a former Scientologist who'd been on my show, as well as having given a talk for the Silicon Valley Humanist Association, when we found out he had passed away, Andrew Gold did a video like speculating on how it was either suicide or a drug overdose. And it turned out that that was not the case. And the guy, unfortunately, too young, died of heart failure. And that's like really shitty, actually. And so that's my main bone to pick with Andrew Gold, or at least my previous bone to pick with Andrew Gold. He's been doing a lot of anti-trans content lately. And this particular video, he has a trans person on, and just based on the thumbnail and description, I think he's having this trans person on to essentially debate with him whether or not they are worthy of being treated like a human being and having their identity acknowledged as such. And so I feel like this is going to be a bit of a rough one to get through. And if that's not something you want to listen to, what I will do this week is I will give out the entire show as a freebie for everybody. You can get it at patreon.com/Echoplex. So if you want to listen to us make fun of Eric Weinstein or something after this, so like if you don't want to listen to this part of the show, you don't have to. And this has been on my list for a while and I've been avoiding doing it, but I was like, I have to do this. I have to do this one because this is like kind of right in our wheelhouse and it's hot garbage. So here it is. Heretics. I tell a trans person a very difficult truth. You ready, HK?
I'll ever be.
Get a trans woman on, they said. Everybody's saying, get a trans woman on. I'm sure now that I do, everyone's going to be angry at me, but this is how it is. I asked Katie Montgomery. She said no, or that she'd think about it, whatever.
Fuck no, Katie Montgomery should not go on here. Katie Montgomery probably told this guy to go fuck himself. I know who that is. That's my Twitter friend. She doesn't know she's my Twitter friend because she's popular and I'm not.
John went politely and kindly said that they, she, he would come on.
Whoa, already with the
women,
that's
literally
she.
women.
Dude, seriously?
Yeah, seriously. What a
Like, he obviously knows the pronouns to use. He's purposefully using the wrong pronouns. Like, why are you like off the bat being a dick?
that's what this is about. This person, I think, went on there to endure this abuse. I think the only way this will have any like redeeming value is if the person like just jumps across the table. His guest just jumps across the table and just like, tackles him or something at some point. And he's like, ew, I touched one of them.
And Katie?
No. Shall I go now? Is that it? We're done.
That's it. Yeah.
Nobody else could give a straight answer, can they? Especially politicians.
They're not women. Okay, what are you?
I was born male.
Okay.
Although the doctors took an hour to work it out, but ultimately that's another story.
Okay.
But yeah, you can't be a trans woman unless you were born a man. It's obvious. You cannot transition unless you started somewhere, even if your transitional journey is to
you could be
something else,
born
and something else isn't changing.
intersex and transition.
Yeah. This is, I don't know there's something going on here. We're going to have to look up Caddy John
Sex,
Wind
changing a
after
gender
this.
expression, a gender identity, and a gender respect, shall we call it, in the eyes of the law. But that's what it is. It's kind of we will take you as this, but you are not literally this, and that's been one of the biggest issues. People are wanting to replace sex with gender with sex, and yet they're two separate things. And some people say gender doesn't exist, and some people say sex doesn't matter. Obviously, plenty of people say sex does matter now.
What would you say to people who consider it maybe sex?
So wait, hold on.
To change to a gender.
Is anyone trying to say that gender and sex are the same thing?
Yes. Transphobes.
Okay. So what we say, and I'll go over this again, is there are multiple different spectrums. You can have, obviously gender is a spectrum because everyone has their own idea of what their gender is. It is bimodal, meaning that people tend towards two modes, male and female. Some people aren't on that spectrum. They're agender, which is totally fine. You don't have to be part of that bimodal spectrum. And then there are several things that we refer to as sex. What your body has in terms of like gonads, whether you have testes or ovaries or something in between. A lot of people have ovotestes, which are where one organ has tissues of both ovaries and testes. So that's also a bimodal distribution. That is not binary. And then there's your external, what do you call them? Primary sex characteristics, meaning like whether you have a penis or a vagina or something in between. That's also a bimodal distribution, not binary. The closest thing to binary that there is your chromosomal sex, which tends towards XY and XX. But a lot of times people are born with a non-typical and atypical chromosomal pair, atypical chromosomal setup, meaning they could have XXX chromosomes or XXY chromosomes, or they could have a single X chromosome. If you have a single Y chromosome, that is deadly, so no one is ever born with that. If you don't have an X chromosome at all. But there are multiple ways your chromosomes could be set up. Like you could have XX chromosomes and be born looking like a man because some gene on some other chromosome activated some gene on one of those X chromosomes, or I don't know exactly how all the genes work, but there's a lot of genes on multiple different chromosomes that determine whether you develop testes or ovaries, whether you develop into typically looking male or typically looking female. And a lot of things can be atypical about that process, and you could be born in a number of ways that are not easily identifiable as like part of that binary. And generally what happens in that case is the doctor and the parents will just decide like, well, looks close enough to a penis, so I guess it's a boy.
Right. And some people who have the atypical chromosomes, they just go through their whole life and never know it.
Yeah, like unless you've been tested, you probably have no idea whether your sexual appearance matches your sexual characteristics chromosomally.
Right. And then there's there's what is it, gametes or something? But that shit I don't understand. I don't understand the first fucking thing about it. And so that's somebody else's job. So
yeah, typically like if you have testes, you will produce sperm, and if you have ovaries, you will produce eggs. But not always. You could have ovaries and not produce any eggs. You could have testes and not produce any sperm. You could have ovotestes and produce one or the other. So yeah, there's all sorts of different variations in human reproductive anatomy and the way we develop. And that's good. It's a good thing that we have that variation, because that's how our species maintains, a high level of variability in its genes, which is good for like things like the plague, where the plague killed a lot of people but didn't kill everyone because there's variations in our genes. So, variations are good.
Gender, because what is that? What is a woman's gender if not long hair and long nails?
Oh, let's get rid of mine quickly, shall we?
Yes.
Oh, I'll be told off for conforming to stereotypes.
Yeah.
Oh dear, I forgot to wear the makeup today. Don't have any. What is gender? I mean, gender is kind of as much a theory as anything else. It's been described as the kind of the means of the oppression on women, but it's upon the nature of their ownership of being a sex, and at the hands of patriarchy and men typically. So gender has previously been described as an oppression, and in the last couple of decades it's been regarded far more as an expression. And that when
what is that expression? If not long hair and long nails, what is that expression as being a woman?
Well, I mean,
wait, what do you mean? Like fucking you could what the fuck? Like you ever what the like yo no wait, this guy's dumb. This is incredibly dumb. I can't even begin to describe to you like just some, and I mean I'm not attracted to women sexually, but just some of the most stunning women I've ever seen. Pictures of women are women with short hair.
Yep. Yeah, this guy is being purposefully obtuse.
I guess I grew up I'm 57 nearly, so I grew up in the 80s music scene, New Romantics and things like that, but also late 70s rock, when the guys wore makeup and blousy shirts, and the gender expression of guys was long hair, blouses, nails, and the guys...
No, baby, that was for the fucking performance. You don't know if that was like, what are you talking about? Like, that was the stage presence and in the music videos. You don't know what that man wore, like, and whether or not he... Like Kiss probably didn't wear their stage makeup like to go swimming. Like, yo, this is like you're when you watch these bands, you're watching like a product. You're watching a product that's being marketed.
Well, I think what she's saying is basically like there were times where like men expressed themselves with long hair and makeup.
Yeah. I mean, some men do like having long hair. That's never really not.
I have long hair, and
it's never really not been a thing.
I used to paint my nails. I haven't painted them in quite a while, but
I'm glad this is definitely about you and your hair and nails. So I'm really glad that
I'm just saying I identify as a man, and both of the things that the interviewer described as being for women, I do. So
a lot more men are painting their nails now, but it's always kind of been a goth thing too, and like it's not like that was associated with being trans or whatever in the goth scene, right? Like black fingernail painting, whatever. It was just always a thing, like rock and roll too. But like you also like I said, that what I think is most important here is that the separation of the person from the product doesn't even seem to exist here, because if they're wearing makeup on stage, you don't know if they wear makeup like when they walk down the street, right? Because you've probably never seen like the guys from fucking Slayer or whoever it is walking down the street. So you don't know if they wear makeup. They have long hair, but this is a product. This is a marketing gimmick. This was the marketing of 80s. It was like a genre of music in the 80s called hair metal. It was like big bangs and shit. Like, and I don't know, like, I'm not necessarily sure that this was even an expression of gender in the way that we talk about it now. It was a product being sold to you on a stage or on the cover of a CD.
Did more makeup than women in the 70s and 80s.
The title of the segment of this YouTube video is a woman long hair and nails?
Well, no, absolutely not. That's dumb.
That is such a stupid title.
Or eyeliner. When I used to play guitar and I loved karaoke and stuff. I'd put a bit of the Green Day, the Killers, that kind of
Green
thing.
Day. But yeah, I mean, so I think in those days there were the gender fluidity of then was not an identity. And I think that's what's changed. We now have identities, whereas then we had...
Well, no, but that's just because you didn't know any gender fluid or gender queer people in the 80s. This is not, again, this is fucking this. She's like conflating marketing of your rock band through a certain image with like a different thing. There were trans people in the 80s and they had gender queer identities. They just weren't. We didn't talk about it much.
Yeah, like there have been trans people since there have been people.
Gender play, gender fluidity, everyone from Bowie to Jagger, expressing themselves in different ways, but they didn't give themselves an identity as a result of it. Some might playfully give themselves a name.
So I do want to clarify something. She's using the term gender fluidity incorrectly. Gender fluidity doesn't mean that you express yourself in a way that doesn't match your, like, the stereotypical expression of someone of your gender. Gender fluidity is when your own gender will change throughout time. Like, one day you could identify as a male, and the next day you could identify as a female. Like,
or you're presenting in ways more like identified, more feminine, more masculine on a day-to-day basis. It's probably more about, maybe going to be more about how society sees you on a Tuesday versus a Wednesday too. Yeah. It's more. Yeah. It's just that it's not always jeans and a t-shirt or whatever. It's, you might wear a skirt. Like Patty Kay sometimes wears a skirt. That's gender fluid presentation. That's all.
Well, presenting yourself as something that doesn't match your like the stereotypes of your gender is not related to gender fluidity at all. Like, that's just gender non-conforming. Like that's the phrase you would use for someone like that. Someone who presents themselves like a femboy, that term? Like, that would be someone who is gender non-conforming. Their gender is male.
The person could also be gender fluid, but
yeah, you can be gender fluid and be gender non-conforming, but the way that she's using it in this particular context is incorrect.
And also, again, just referring to what it was largely a marketing phenomena.
Yep.
Or whatever. But it was tongue-in-cheek, it was expressive, it was gender rebellion. And if anything, it was rebellion against the stereotypes, in the same way that women who went with short hair and went butch or tomboy, irrespective of sexual identity.
But that's not just short hair.
Rebellion for them.
Yeah.
But when the men rebelled in the same way, there's a big difference between being able to do it in the pop and rock scene, because male stereotypes were quite conformist. I went to an all-male public school, which wasn't a fantastically good fun idea or experience.
For non-Brits, that means a posh school.
Yeah.
Not a state.
Yeah, public doesn't mean free in the UK. Public means expensive.
I went to one as well. I went to a public school as well.
You're going to out yourself and say which one?
Merchant Taylors.
Yeah, I used to run against you. I went to St Albans.
St Albans, boo.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we used to do cross country together then.
Yeah,
I'm older.
This is all very posh.
Sorry.
Yeah, all the sports.
On. Yes.
I obviously opted out of team sports as fast as possible. Hated the idea of sharing a shower room with a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
So I understand why people don't want to share shower rooms with anyone of a different gender.
Actually, that's like a long gone thing in most. I don't know about Great Britain, but to the extent that there are showers in locker rooms at schools now, most of the time they're not just this open shower like you would see in,
Mine was.
right. Well, okay. Well, again,
That was 2006, so
okay. Well, I'm
may have changed.
never mind then. Yours was different.
In fact, anyone else at all, to be honest. But so I think that's where kind of some of this kind of gender expression rebellion kind of became identity stuff. So and that's why I'm kind of what some people call old school trans. It gets into the language of true trans and all kinds of other things as well. And you do get, and we even discussed this phrase, hasn't the gender identity movement, trans rights activists ruined it for the rest of us old school trans.
This is like what? This is some get off of my lawn and stop stealing my flamingos shit. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what she means by that.
little bit of that argument about that the kind of the newer movement has made life harder for old school transsexuals and transvestites.
There were stats around that, weren't there? That's general support for trans as it is has gone down.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at, for example, the social attitude surveys. I think the last one was 21 and before that, or 22, and the last one before that was 2017. And it's gone down from around, depending on which question you ask and which group you ask, something of the order of 55% to 70% of people, including, and some of these questions were directed specifically to women, but generally the population said, yeah, we're okay with trans. And now it's more like in the 40 to 55 mark. So in other words, it's gone down 15%.
but wait a minute. So no, wait a minute. No. At the extremes, it has. But it like, okay. So this is stupid because you had the 55 to 70, and then you have 45 to 55. Well, or 40 to 55, and it's like, well, 55 is included in both of those groups. So what if it hasn't moved at all? What if it's the same as it ever was, and you're just getting different like numbers? Also, the range is too wide. Like none of this, I don't know where this statistics came from. This is playing with numbers, and I think maybe possibly making shit up. But to the extent that it's gone down, I feel like we're about to watch one of the conversations that is like cause for this, right? I'd say before 2017 or whatever, like there was homophobia and transphobia, but there wasn't like this. I think right around 2020. The current moral panic around trans people started bubbling up. Like, not that there wasn't like transphobia before, but that it wasn't like a huge hot topic. Remember the bathroom thing? Like probably right when you started coming on the Sunday show with us, we'd occasionally talk about this weird shit with the bathrooms. That was sort of like a flash in the pan, and then it went away. And it was like right around the end of the Obama years or the beginning of the Trump years, and now like. And this, would she say 2022 or something? Yeah, that was like well into the satanic panic around trans people that's been going on. Like well into like QAnon having oozed all over everything, and people using those sorts of fears around child trafficking and whatnot, and sort of projecting it onto queer people, mostly onto trans women. And so there's it's like these things, this isn't all happening in a vacuum. This isn't all just like, oh, people change their minds. No, the people have been subject to propaganda, like anti-trans propaganda for a very long time. And those who were people who were like, oh, I have trans friends and they're totally cool, aren't the people whose minds were changed, right? It was the people who were like, well, I suppose so. Maybe some of those people's minds changed. Or people who maybe didn't like trans people in the first place, but even on an anonymous survey didn't want to say it because they didn't want to say it to the surveyor, didn't want to admit it to themselves or whatever. Now it's become more socially acceptable, which is a weird thing to say, to answer no. I'm not in favor of trans rights. So this is to the extent that, first of all, I don't know where these numbers came from. A 15-point spread out of 100 that's a 15% of what could be is the spread, so that's too much. And I'm not sure that people change their minds just independently because the trans movement got extra weird or whatever. I think it was that the anti-trans movement got what's that I'm looking for? Oh, they got infused with cash.
With ash?
Cash.
Oh, cash. Yeah.
Like a moneyed moral panic.
But actually about 20% in terms of loss of people's comfort level with it. And has that been because there's been too big an ask? The current trans movements, have they had an ask too far with Gender Recognition Act 2.0 or whatever else? The idea of self-ID. I think self-ID has been...
What is the ask, though?
And Scotland has got...
Like,
she's trying to explain it. If you let her, I mean, she's going to probably be wrong, but you talked over it before she started trying to explain it.
Okay.
Movements, have they had an ask too far with Gender Recognition Act 2.0 or whatever else? The idea of self-ID. I think self-ID has been badly handled, missold, and Scotland has gone too far. The irony is the fact that actually old school transsexuals, in order to transition, you had to do self-ID. In other words, you were not allowed to transition unless you self-ID'd for 2 years first. We've always had self-ID. People like April Ashley, who transitioned...
Okay, now that doesn't make any sense now. The self-ID is a big ask, but we had to do it before. Get off my lawn.
Yeah, like... As far as I understand it, there has been no like additional ask from the trans community. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the trans community just wants to be treated like everyone else, right?
Right. At the bare minimum, they want to be fucking left alone so they can live their lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what this self-ID thing, because she was like, oh, the self-ID thing. And now, well, we had to do that before actually, and it was fine. So this lady, she just undercut her own point in like fucking a minute, less than a minute, 40 seconds.
In the 50s, got a female passport in the 1950s before there was ever a gender recognition certificate, or getting two psychiatrists to sign off on it.
That doesn't mean it was right, because
it doesn't mean it was right, but it meant that in order for a person who actually presented in a very stereotypical 1950s, 60s, 70s way woman, for her to travel safely through, airports and countries, she got a female passport was given to her. It was deemed this is the best outcome, the best way of keeping you safe and respecting you as a British citizen when traveling abroad. And half the things we do in life are compromises. Half the things we do in life are adjustments, are ways in which we can coexist. We already kind of compromise and coexist even within the Equality Act between religions and sexuality, between any two religions. Yeah. You can pick any two or even one to have a fight. They have fights among themselves. Yeah, I mean, even within the Equality Act, you've got the idea that religions have to coexist with sexuality, and any two religions have to coexist with each other. You only have to jump to a Middle East story at the moment, or to India, to realize that any two religions will fight with each other, and any one religion will have fights within itself. Sunni and Shia in the Middle East that can fight on their own. They don't need to start a fight with Israel or anyone else. Yeah. So in that sense, we're already doing accommodations in life. We don't have to agree to have a civic life where we can get on with our neighbor. But I think one of the things we've got now, though, is this polarized extremism of ideologies and viewpoints that says, I'm right, you're wrong, and if you're wrong, can't even live near you, can't even talk to you, can't even respect you. Whereas before, I guess the phrase, I've got a great old friend, actually, who's now what you would call an ex-gay person, ended up in North Carolina and going through conversion therapy as a Christian. And there he's now an ex-gay, because the Christian faith was more important to him than being gay, and so he went through conversion therapy. Essentially, I went through conversion therapy. I had the transgender demon cast out of me, and it came back because I was a former fundamentalist Christian. But I'm as much a gender atheist as a Christian atheist now.
But the thing is, we have a separation between sort of religion, and I think that's important. I'm an atheist myself, and I think no religion. And I see, and I think you might see some of this trans ideology, some parts of it, as quite religious itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's within.
Well, no, like now you just start calling any like belief or any like thing that somebody believes in or lives their life in a certain way. Now you just start calling it a religion. You've just like removed the definition of religion, because it just means way of life.
Yep. Yeah. Like religion has a particular definition, and transgenderism does not fit that definition.
But they would probably reply to you saying it's a trans ideology or gender ideology, but still, like, that doesn't make it a religion. Even if you want to refer to it in that sort of odd way, that still doesn't make it religious. It's just a belief system.
Yep. But actually, I mean, it's interesting that actually gender critical women.
And also, it is funny that like they're saying that as if to say like, oh, it is religious and religion is bad, right? Wouldn't you agree? It's kind of the same thing where, a Christian will say something like, well, it takes a lot of faith to be an atheist.
I think you might see some of this trans ideology, some parts of it, as quite religious itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's but actually, I mean, it's interesting that actually gender critical women actually call trans a cult, and actually trans activists call gender critical a cult. When each side calls each other a cult, and each side thinks each other is fundamentalist, and each side use the word fascist of each other, it becomes interesting. And because I sit in the middle, which to me is my new heresy, sitting in the middle and disagreeing with both, or at least able to understand both, and, kind of moderation to me is the new heresy, because everyone actually is in these idealistic camps.
That's true.
But I think that's one of the differences I'm trying to, explain, that we've now very much got a polarized world. Instead of gradually, you'd have thought by 2020 something, we'd be moving towards much more kind of coexistence around stuff. Instead, pick a subject, whether it was COVID, whether it's climate change, whether it's politics, whether it's trans, whether it's the Middle East, they're incredibly polarized instead of...
But one of those things is not like the other, though. Climate change. The fix is in on climate change, baby. These are not matters of opinion. You know what I mean? Like, these are and the other things, like, I'm not like trying to like say that like, oh, it's good to have varying opinions on whether or not trans people are people. I'm just saying that it's a very different issue than climate change.
Yeah.
And just politics more generally. Well, yeah, that's the point of politics, is actually that so we can disagree on policy without fucking chopping each other's heads off, or whatever it was we did before we had politics, right? Politics is supposed to be the antidote to might makes right, or whatever. It's supposed to be. So you're supposed to argue. That's the point.
I think the example I'm trying to give of this gay friend and I was, he used to talk about him being, back in the day when he was the only gay in the village. And I said, well, if you're the only gay in the village, and he was Welsh, I said, well, I'm the only tranny in the valley. And when it was one person in the village turned a blind eye.
Yes.
And what we used to call tolerance.
But there wasn't just what the only gay guy in the village had to be fucking somebody, right?
Yeah, that's the problem, is it's never been like just the people who are out. Like, even right now, it is not just the people who are out. There are tons of people who are trans or are gay and are not out.
Yeah, even like in the Bay Area, I see people like they're not going to be somebody I'm like interested in or whatever for a variety of reasons, but I see people on their Grindr profile, they're like, I'm on the down low, and I'm like, oh, well, that's not really for me. I don't say anything, I just ignore them if they hit me up, but my thought process is like, dude, get this shit sorted out and hit me up later. Like, this isn't some shit I want to deal with. Like, if things go well or whatever, I don't want to deal with any of the associated bullshit that goes along with that. And that's like me speaking from a position of privilege, I suppose, because I've had the privilege of having, very accepting friends and family and all that. But, there are, like, even here in the Bay Area, yeah, even in a very accepting place, there are people who are hiding their sexuality. And I imagine there are people who are genderqueer who are hiding it as well. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And something she said there, she said, when it was just one person in the village turned a blind eye. Like, that is extremely problematic, because what she's saying is, as long as the majority of trans people or the majority of gay people are suppressed and closeted, then society as a whole will be fine with that. And it's like, that's a problem. Is that not a problem? That's a terrible problem.
Right. For the closeted, because they're living in fear of being outed.
Yeah.
Or just not dating, even though they could otherwise be. Like, dating is fun and good, like, some people don't like to date, and that's fine, but people who would otherwise be out dating and, mating and hooking up or whatever, but who aren't doing it, they're like missing out on, intimacy and sex. Yeah, absolutely. Plus just the lying to everybody all the time, or maybe not lying, but lies through omission, or straight up lying. Let me like, oh, what do you think of her? You go, oh, she's hot. Well, no, you're gay. You don't, you maybe can recognize that she's pretty, but that's a different statement.
Tolerance to young trans activists is an evil word. We don't want tolerance. We want acceptance. We want inclusion. We want equality. Tolerance is like half-hearted, but to me,
That's
tolerance
actually
is
not a
particularly
bad
British,
position.
but also particularly modern. It's how we muddle along without having to agree. And I think what we've lost now is tolerance, and we've become intolerant of others to the point, and we're intolerant even within groups. And,
Yes.
when I get involved with, gender critical women, the trans camp kind of cancel me. And then what I would say the more hardline gender critical women cancel me, and then cancel the gender critical women that spoke to me. And they fall upon each other, upon their own side. So there's an intolerance even within a group towards anyone. It's like purity policing within either extreme.
That's true. I think that thing about it can be difficult sometimes when we're in the middle and it's like, okay, well, these people
But
see.
you are not white. But I hate this stuff too. I hate this, like just declaring yourself to be in the middle. Like it's like a virtue signal. I talk about it a lot. I'm not going to fucking give the spiel on it again.
Aggressive and angry on one side, they're aggressive and angry, and they're calling them a cult. They're calling them a cult. Sometimes
No, Andrew, you're just entrenched with this crazy anti-Scientology community where everybody thinks everybody's a member of a cult. I am a pretty strong advocate for queer rights, being queer myself, but also just like not being genderqueer or whatever. And I don't really hurl the word cult around very much at all. And it's like a pretty big part of the project here that we do look into cults and control groups. I may point out specific things that remind me of specific things about a certain control group or whatever, but people aren't calling things a cult very often. But the people that are, if you're looking at you could find shitlibs on Twitter saying all kind of dumb shit. You can find gender critical people on Twitter saying all kind of dumb shit. But I don't think the people that are like in the shit in the trenches here are just running around calling everybody a cult. I think that's your friends in the anti-Scientology movement influencing you there, Andrew.
Okay, well,
Yeah, and I think one thing a lot of people don't realize is that something can have a lot of cult-like tendencies, but still not be a cult.
That's why I like to use the language about control and demand versus just straight up calling things a cult.
of calling each other a cult, the middle ground's the right place. Scientology, they call people outside of Scientology, they say they're in a cult. But we know that Scientology is the cult. So sometimes we do have to say, okay, which one is engaging in more magical thinking? And that's when, just where I am right now, the trans ideology, which is not where you are. I'm talking about the people on the other side of you who are saying trans women are women. The UN, trans lesbians are lesbians.
Yeah, I mean, go back 6-12 years, I might have said that.
Okay.
I mean, the reason why my own language continues to evolve, my ideas continue to evolve, because I do believe in debate, and I've always believed in debate. I thought the whole no debate thing was a big mistake.
What brought you down from trans women are women?
Can we not defer to experts? Like, why does he have a problem deferring to experts?
Well, he wants everything to be if it's the same thing we keep talking about, like where Brett Weinstein's like, oh, I need to debate Sam Harris on this. It's like, well, Sam Harris is a talk show host. You know, why don't you debate? And if you're going to have a debate, which I'm, there's very little value in online debate anyway. But if you're going to have a debate with an expert in a relevant field. Where is where's like a childhood development expert on these people's shows, right? Like where's like a psychologist who like specializes in like talking to people about their sex and sexuality? Like, where are those people? Where I don't know. I don't even know like the names of other specialties, but where are those people? They don't want those people in these conversations, because those people aren't going to have any hot takes. And what those people are going to say is going to go against what they're saying. And it's going to go against what they're saying in a fairly authoritative and hopefully, if the person's a good communicator, easy to understand way.
Yeah, and they'll say things like it's basic biology, and then it's like, well, why don't you just ask a biologist what is the advanced biology?
Right.
And then maybe you'll learn that the basic biology is wrong. Like, the biology you were taught in 4th grade isn't actually how the world works.
Are women.
One, I guess I'd never obviously at a magical thinking versus scientific biological reality, I'd never kind of gone down saying that black is white, never gone down that line. But I in the language of 6 to 12, 15, 18 years ago, because I've been out 17, 18 years now. So over that period, I've seen the language change. I've seen what I would call a tolerance and accommodation.
Yo, wait a minute. This is like this is like the fucking thinking that like when you first got into music, that's when the best music was, right? Like she's saying that like, oh, everything was great in this community when I first came out. And this is just that this is like, oh, you know, like all the dance music was better when I was in my 20s, right? I don't really think that. Yep. But people think that because they were in their 20s. And if this person just came out, she was ecstatic probably to be able to be out. And so she thought the community was welcoming and all that. This is just that bias of, it's almost like a zeal of the converted, but not really. It's like like this is new and interesting and fun being able to be out, right? And so there's going to be a bias toward that time period. And that's fine. I mean, that's human nature, but if you're trying to come on and say that you've been really thoughtful about all this stuff, you have to and you haven't considered that or acknowledged that you're going to be biased in favor of the time period during which you came out because you got to be yourself for the first time, then you haven't really thought about any of this stuff that much, because that's pretty simple shit.
Yep.
We will treat you as if you were a woman, gradually becomes to, oh no, we're gathering the evidence that there is there are male brains, there are female brains, and there are trans brains. Netherlands particularly does a lot of studies in the brains around this, demonstrating a few factors that could say one thing or another. But I actually go to I read a lot of neuroscience, been to a few neuroscience lectures, and I've seen neuroscientists.
I've been to a few neuroscience lectures. Oh, great. Now get the fuck out of here. I went somewhere and listened to a neuroscientist talk. That doesn't mean shit. That's interesting. And I hope the person was a good science communicator, but that doesn't give you any sort of domain expertise.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to write a textbook,
right? Or understand a very technical paper on the matter. Look like fucking gobbledygook to you, because it is to you, because it's a highly technical paper on a very specialized subject matter.
Maybe we should listen to the people who do have the expertise necessary to say write a textbook on it. Maybe they've written down their expertise in some sort of a book, And I don't maybe they wrote a book. Maybe these people who have the authority and expertise to write textbooks have written textbooks about it.
It's also
we
possible
could just crack one of those open and read it.
It's also possible that she listened to a couple Sam Harris podcasts and thinks she listened to a neuroscience lecture. And a lot of these people, you're never too old to get YouTube brain, right?
There is a female brain, there is a male brain, and other people saying, no, there's no such thing. There is a brain.
Yeah.
And yes, it's subject to external conditions, they're malleable, etc. And there is no difference between a male and a female brain. That's not strictly true, because brains are subject to hormones, amongst other things. And brains of men are subject to more testosterone, so you get an androgenization of the brain. Do trans women maybe have less androgenization of their brain? Does their brain sit somewhere in between the two? But no, I don't believe that there's a lady brain trapped in a male body, or vice versa. But we've been through lots of language shifts the last 20 years. And I guess there was a tendency from around 2011 onwards that I began to start questioning things. I remained a trans activist, not the way it's kind of perhaps seen now, and they wouldn't probably have me on any of the same kind of activism bandwagons now. But I was definitely kind of a trans advocate, should we call it, more than a trans activist. And I was supporting the Equality Act of 2010. My next door neighbor, bar one, is Linda Bellos, who was very big on the Equality Act. And we've had debates about the Equality Act and trans for about a dozen years. And we always found everything on what is the law, what are human rights. And in that sense, this whole kind of, again, the idea, what rights do trans people not have? Well, we all have human rights, and actually trans people do have rights in the Equality Act, but so do women, and so do religious groups. And so now, under kind of case law, do gender critical views have protections? But actually within the Equality Act, it's transition that's protected. It's not necessarily the notion of being trans, it's the act of transitioning. And that's what's protected. No age has been attached to it, which has thrown the government into a bit of a quandary about what can you do with trans kids in schools. Or I get in trouble for saying trans kids. What I mean by that is children who are questioning their gender.
Sure.
again, the people are jumping on language all of the time rather than actually trying to say, what are you actually trying to say? They go, you just said that.
Yeah, it is a minefield. And you go through your head, and I now go, okay, you've said children who want to change gender, and I've gone, okay.
Well, I said children who are questioning their gender. I didn't say change, because but that's what I mean.
But then I say okay, and then that gets clipped, and it goes, Andrew Gold agrees that children want to...
Well, no, I was at this recent event in Brighton at Sister Salon, which started out as not as a single-sex event, and then Sister Salon put it on and opened it up to people on that date, because it was a replacement event, because the first event got cancelled, which had been put on by Brighton Skeptics in the pub.
Right.
But what I actually said something there, and I used the word trans kids, and I use that as a shortcut for teenagers who are questioning their gender, because that's a little bit more of a mouthful. And this woman came up to me and said, I actually thought what you said was okay, Katie, but you said this word trans kids. There's no such thing as a trans kid. And I said, well, what I mean by that? And then she said, oh, okay, I get you now, but you really shouldn't use that phrase. And this just goes back to what I was saying. I keep learning.
But wait a minute, is it if somebody, how is that not cancel culture?
Also, how's that person not a trans kid? If a kid identifies as a gender that is not their assigned gender at birth, how are they not a trans kid?
Here's how this goes. Cancel culture is real bad unless somebody comes up to you after an event at I guess put on by Skeptics at the Pub. God, you ran a really fun, nice Skeptics at the Pub, by the way. People there were all very kind and fun and interesting, and there was no libertarian there yelling about taxation being theft like the one we tried to run in Campbell, which fell apart because there was the libertarian who wouldn't stop showing up yelling about how taxation is theft, like at a teacher. And so,
oh geez.
But like, how is this not like language policing and shit? Because like they're supposed to be against all that, right?
Yep.
I guess it's not language policing if it's at a Skeptics at the Pub event. I don't know. It's weird.
And I therefore keep changing.
Like you can say, for example, that you don't think that a trans person, that a trans woman is a woman. Like you could say that, but you can't say that like there's no such thing as trans kids. Like a kid who identifies as a gender that doesn't match their assigned gender at birth, by definition, is a trans kid.
And I therefore keep changing my position, and yet there's
always going to be a problem, though. You're not going to please everyone.
No, and there's a video of me saying something 12 years ago going around Twitter at the moment, which people are having fun with, clipped from a documentary made about me 12 years ago. And I said something 12 years ago which I probably wouldn't say now. And I said something 2 years ago I wouldn't say now. And even what I'm saying now, I'll probably change my mind in a year's time, because I'm continually open to more information and to what makes this best accommodation, which goes back to this argument for tolerance. What are we willing to accept so that we all get on?
Yeah,
and we do that already around faiths that don't believe in abortion, that don't believe in homosexuality, and food rules or whatever it might be. We make accommodations, and we don't have to agree with them.
Yeah.
We allow Scientologists to exist, etc.
We do. We don't allow them to change our current laws, though.
Yes.
They wouldn't be allowed into a changing room of whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That's the issue here.
But why can't a Scientologist go into a changing room? That's stupid.
I think he's equating Scientology with gender. I
think so.
That was a really weird. Yeah, there's no areas that are like religion specific, except like closed churches. And then yes, closed churches don't allow Scientologists in. Like if I try and go to the Scientologist office, I'll probably get kicked out.
Right. But yeah, you might be able to run in there and use the bathroom real quick. But they might not even care which bathroom you use. Who knows? They worship a space alien. But this guy got interested in Scientology only insofar as it had anything to do with the Masterson trial, because he was doing like celebrity news for a long time. Spent a lot of time shitting on Harry and Meghan, for example. So he's like late to the party. And he ended up talking to like, some of the okay people, but most of the fucking ghouls in the anti-Scientology community. And now he like thinks he understands shit about some shit that he doesn't really know that much about. He just brings it up now in almost every one of these discussions, essentially to compare what he refers to as trans ideology to a space alien cult, which I think is a little weird and inaccurate.
thing is, the laws have already changed to be inclusive of trans. The question, and what people are asking
Which
for,
ones
though,
have
is to change. Well, we've got the Gender Recognition Act of 2004.
What does it mean? Like, the brief. What's the outline?
Well, the main purpose of the GRA of 2004, in part, was one, it was slightly foisted upon us by some legislation and some cases that were going through the EU, and it was based around marriage issues in the main. Because otherwise, if you had people who transitioned within a marriage, you would end up having gay marriage by the back door. Because you can't, if one person transitioned and did an April Ashley and got a female sex passport and remained married and all the rest of it, and suddenly, hold on, if you're female and you're married to him, then actually you're a same-sex marriage, but we haven't got same-sex marriage laws.
Amazing.
So actually the GRA enabled you to transition your sex and also transition out of your marriage as well, and also to get your birth certificate changed so that you could get your degree certificate changed, because it would be a nightmare getting a job and then having to produce your degree certificate, and that's in a different name and a different gender. So some of it was a legal fudge, which is why I've called it awkward words in the past. It was imperfect law, and it has become outdated and it needs an update. And then so the trans side said it needs an update to self-ID, and the gender critical side is saying it needs an update to not exist at all. So I do agree it needs an update, but where that's going to be is, I think it's impossible to remove it entirely. The Equality Act supersedes it in many respects, because now it's transition that is a protected characteristic, whether you use the GRA at all. I do not have a gender recognition certificate. I could get one instantly. I've got a letter that says I can get one. But it's pointless, because no one needs it.
Should trans women be allowed in female changing rooms?
Do you define the changing room? Where does a trans woman change? And what is okay, let's not forget the word trans
difficult
woman.
the other way. Where does man?
Yeah. Where does someone who has transitioned change? And I'm defining transition at this point, not socially, but physically. Where does someone who's physically, so I have
cut the willy off.
Yeah.
Have you cut your willy off?
It's not technically cut off.
Whoa, dude.
They always want to know way too much information about some other people's genitals.
I would never ask, ever, at all, ever.
Yeah. I would never even wonder. That wouldn't even cross my mind to ask.
If somebody has and they want to share that experience with me, but that's fine with me. Like, I'd be perfectly comfortable having a conversation if someone else initiates it. But like, that's not my place to ask, and it's like a little bit weird just wondering, just like asking your. That's almost the same as just I have interviewing somebody and be like, hey, and it's about nothing having to do with sex or whatever, and I'm like, are you hung? You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like the same. It's like it's in that it's like more inappropriate kind of, but it's in that realm of like, this is like an inappropriate question to ask your interview guest.
Yeah, there is one time where that question is appropriate. Well, there's two times. First, in the doctor's office, because the doctor needs to know. And second, if you are dating someone and you're going to have sex with them, or you're like determining whether you will have sex with them. And that's if you have a strong preference for one set of genitals over the other, then that's an appropriate question to ask. But I doubt this interviewer is planning to date her. So that is an extremely inappropriate question.
And this person did say that they had physically transitioned, and it was kind of maybe hard to catch it. And the appropriate question is, are you saying that you've physically transitioned? You know what I'm saying? There is an appropriate way to ask if the person brings it up about themselves and maybe you're unclear as to what they're saying. But I think what she said was pretty clear too. I think she said that she had physically transitioned. And so his follow-up was just like, oh, did you get your dick hacked off? This is when you throw the mic at your interviewer. You're like, hey, is this screwed on here real tight? Is it easy to get this cable out of here?
The only question I think you could ask in that scenario is like, what do you mean by physically transitioned?
Right.
Because if someone says physically transitioned, to me, that means they're on hormone replacement therapy. To
me, I don't care. Right. Like, if they want to tell me more, they can tell me more, but otherwise I don't care. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm just having a conversation with somebody. Even if, I don't know, that's weird. I
also think your genitals don't matter at all when you're determining what changing room to go in.
but physically. Where does someone who's physically... So I have
Cut the willy off.
Yeah,
Have you cut your willy off?
It's not technically cut off, it's inverted. But yes, I did.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, you keep it. How you get a neoclitoris by turning the tip of the willy into...
Do you miss your willy? Do you mind me being a bit facetious?
No, you can say anything.
Do you miss your willy?
No, God no.
Are you happy with what's there?
Yeah, clitoris is an upgrade.
You don't seem that sure, though.
When?
You sort of looked into the distance longingly.
No, that's like, it's not a poker tell. No, I have no wistful missings of it. I mean, so that's not an issue for me. And I actually didn't have a conventional operation. I had what's called a vaginoplasty, I had a labioplasty, not a vaginoplasty.
Okay.
So they didn't create a vagina.
Okay.
So no one who possesses a willy can have sex with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll bear that in mind as I go about my day.
But they give you a functioning clitoris because they take the tip of the penis and they convert.
Does it work well?
It works better than the older.
Shut up.
Oh, hell yeah.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, if you have a headache, it's the best place to go. It's better.
So
than
that works, and you
paracetamol.
can orgasm.
It surprised me too.
Well, that's good. I imagine I've heard.
There's no guarantee.
A lot of people, it doesn't go well.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot, and I know, and this is one of the things that's sometimes hushed under the carpet for a lot of people. They have corrective surgeries. My own surgeon actually came up when we were in Brighton at the Sisters Salon event. Mr. Bellringer.
I gotta say, she handled that question pretty well.
All
That was an
things
extremely
considered.
inappropriate question, and she handled it well.
Things, yes. It's like a stand-up routine already. Yeah. But anyway, Mr. Bellringer he is a doctor, it's just that you call surgeons Mr. But Bellringer had actually raised concerns at Tavistock as well. And he said, look, there are some issues. People are not being told all of the issues. And he was very honest with me, perhaps because I had previously been married to a doctor. So he thought, can't pull the wool over your eyes. I asked good questions. And I said, look, these are my concerns. He said, these are valid concerns. And he said, look, have you thought about this? He said, like 50 years from now, there's going to be old people's homes filled with like aging transsexuals who may have dementia and are going to need their care worker to help them, because one dilemma is if you have the vaginoplasty and you don't actively keep it active, whether that's through a dilator or through active regular sex, there's a potential for it to close up because your body treats it as a wound.
Yeah.
You're making a hole where there wasn't a hole. So I said, okay, I don't want any of that. I want the low maintenance version, and I'm not interested in a sexual life, so therefore I'm not interested in anything. He said, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to make your clitoris or not? I said, I really don't care. I said, knock yourself out.
Have fun. Good night.
Yeah, and so I was quite surprised to find later on, many months later, it worked. That wasn't the why I did it.
Can I just, I want to pull up just on something you said, that he didn't pull the wool over your eyes because you were married to a doctor, did you say? The suggestion being these doctors who are presumably paid to do these procedures often will try to trick.
I don't think anyone's tricking. I don't want to sit
Pull
that language
over
to see
eyes.
that word, but I think there has been the huge and vast number and increase in those asking and requesting the services has put them under incredible time and money pressure. And I kind of went through it in an era where, as I say, you had to do this 2 years self-ID before you were even considered to be entering the system, before you were even able to then potentially get hormones, which took another year, at least several appointments. You had proper psychiatric assessments. You often had 3 months therapy. You had to fill out 30 pages of quite a lot of questions. And they were really quite thorough. And my own psychiatrist at the time, who was actually my ex-wife's boss, actually said, he said,
Wait a minute. Whoa.
people who come through the system.
Wait, why would you go to your wife's if you needed a psychiatric treatment? You should probably not go to the same office that your wife works at. Like, go to have them refer. Never mind.
And actually
Not
drop
important
out
to the
before they go any
conversation.
further. So there was actually a loss of 50% not continuing. The hoops you had to jump through were quite rigorous. And then in 2011, as I say, which is when my own transgender skepticism something started, because in 2011 there was a move to depathologize being trans, to depathologize gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder, as it was called back then. And the idea with that was that, it will no longer be a psychiatric condition. And actually, in the International Classification of Diseases, I think we're ICD-12 now, it is no longer considered a psychiatric condition. It's just now grouped under sexual health or something.
Yes, where it belongs.
20 years ago, it was considered a psychiatric condition, and there's a move. And the first country to depathologize it, I think, was Argentina in 2012. And now it's a dozen countries around the world have actually removed it from being a psychiatric condition. You can have transition. kind of no questions asked.
But
This is incorrect.
Yeah, it is. And for
They will ask they asked me questions about my fucking knee.
Right. This is just incorrect. It's there. She's acting like you go into a transition booth, right? Like the unalive booth in fucking Futurama, but it's for trans instead. No. This is just incorrect. This is absolutely incorrect. They're acting like there's just a bunch of butcher doctors out there who, if you go in and just suggest to them that you need a surgery of this kind, that they'll just be like, "Oh, I can slot you in on Tuesday."
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
Right. There's still, it's not, I'm not even sure I would call them hurdles. There is still like appropriate care that happens prior to any of these surgical interventions and any hormonal intervention. There is appropriate care, whatever form it may take, but this is just untrue. This would just like absolutely violate like the Hippocratic Oath. Doctors would lose their licenses for like there would just be just the amount of fucking lawsuits there would be like.
Yeah, it would completely go against the concept of informed consent.
I will absolutely say it is a
psychiatric condition. Doesn't even have to have negative connotations.
No.
It is something to do with your psyche. It is a condition that leads you to believe you are or should be of the.
You can have, not gender dysphoria, but body dysmorphia. You can have psychological distress because your breasts are of uneven sizes. A previous neighbour of mine, had her breasts equalised in size and shape because it was causing her distress. The fact that they would.
But that's gender affirming care.
Yep.
What is in where you have breasts?
What is there?
Yes.
Hormones that grew breasts.
So it was not all hard
it's
or
entirely
anything.
No, it's actual breast tissue. Men have breast tissue. That's why
this poor man has no idea how the human body works. Jesus Christ.
I'm surprised he isn't like strip now.
He just thinks that like humans are Legos, so if you want boobs, you have to like take off the legs and the head and then like put on a new torso.
As well, a little bit less likely.
Another thing to worry about. Thank you.
I can still get prostate cancer, a little less likely now because estrogen is one of the treatments for it. So, so it's already preventative.
So your breasts just started. You haven't had any plastic.
I had nothing.
Because they're quite rambunctious.
They're
rambunctious.
You've got some stuff in it,
dude. How does he not get this? Like every human body has the genes to grow breasts. Every single one. His body has the genes necessary to grow breasts.
Also, he's now like accusing, an accusation, I guess is the wrong word. He keeps telling this person that they've had implants. Listen.
Rambunctious.
They're what people call a
You've got some stuff in there.
No, there's nothing in there. There's a D cup.
Okay.
And
Do you think...
But they grew through hormones, but one of the reasons they probably grew...
Like, why does this guy think that he has nipples? Like, does he know what mammal means?
Other trans women, is the fact that I had low testosterone.
I see.
I've always had this low androgen, low testosterone condition. That's why I didn't get a male puberty.
Some women are flat.
Yes, I would.
So how
my
can it be
sister and
that...
I have the same genetics theoretically, but she probably hate me for saying that if she ever sees this video. But I think she's got A-cup breasts.
Let me ask you this, right? Controversial question. Do you think that you pass?
Of course not.
Okay.
But occasionally, did I ever try to pass? No, because I don't change my voice for starters.
Yeah.
Open big mouth, end of passing, even if I did pass. That said, Linda Bellos and I were at a bar recently, and the barman said to Linda Bellos, "What can I get you to drink, sir?" And then turned to me, "What can I get you to drink, ma'am?" But neither of us had spoken. But Linda was clocked as male, and I was clocked as female visually.
Okay.
Blind barman, you could say, whatever. But Linda gets misgendered on a regular basis. She says sometimes 5 times a day, but she gets called sir all the time. Okay. And she won't mind probably me saying that she's got breasts bigger than mine. And yet that's the last thing people notice about her. They notice the short cropped haircut, the masculine suits, her poise, her standing, whatever it might be. People have tells around gender. 90% of people, 95% of people, you can clock their gender. Yes. But then every now and then there's someone who think, well, I'm not sure entirely. Until something else happens, they move. And you think, what am I looking for now? Again, stereotypes, long hair or not. But am I looking at hips? Am I looking at size? Am I looking at whatever it might be. I remember being on an aircraft and the stewardess coming up from behind. And if you see from behind long hair,
Sure.
actually I haven't got one earring in, but I had another earring in, long hair from behind and curvature of the breasts. They're coming up from behind and they say, "What can I get you to drink, madam?"
What does it do to you? What does it feel like to hear that?
Okay, there's a little bit of joy of inclusion maybe sometimes when I hear that, but actually I've stopped caring now because the very next thing I said to her is, "I'll have a whiskey, please." And she said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir." And I go, "No, you were right the first time." And then she goes, "Oh, I'm confused." I said, No, if you looked at me, I'm the confused one. So, I've learned to realize that you can actually, play with gender. That's not the same thing as the sex issue, the sex-based rights and all the rest of it. But to me, there's a little bit of trying to bring back some of this 20, 30 years ago gender rebellion rather than ideological fighting. What happened to the joy?
So I think what she's missing here is that, like, yes, it doesn't give her dysphoria to be misgendered. Clearly, like, she's talking about how she'll like do things on purpose that cause people to misgender her, but to other people it does. Like, it does cause them like grief to be misgendered. And I feel like she's being kind of crass towards those people's feelings, towards like how those people perceive themselves being misgendered,
Yeah, I also just think that it seems like dispositionally she's like a jokester. You know what I'm saying? She likes to. She likes, it's like you were saying, she likes to fuck with people.
Yeah.
And so, in this case, she was fucking with the flight attendant, which actually I think is pretty mean because the flight attendant was just trying to get this right, friend. Right? The flight attendant was just trying to be kind.
Yep.
At least as the story was told, the flight attendant was just trying to be cool. And you're like, "Oh, I'm going to fuck with this person who's just trying to be cool to me." And it's like, well, I mean, okay, if that's your friend, I suppose, but that's not your friend. It's a flight attendant. They have a difficult job. And
I mean, I don't think she really did anything wrong there, but I feel like she should try and understand that, like, not everyone is okay with being misgendered. To someone else, being misgendered might be the difference between them having a good day and them spending like an hour and a half crying into their pillow that night. Like, there are things that can happen that cause some people to be like very upset that would not upset other people.
Or even not such an extreme example, just increasing their overall stress level on what was otherwise like a decent day or whatever,
Yeah.
Turning a decent day into a meh day. Like,
yep.
Or turning a meh day into a bad day.
Yep. Yeah, rather than dysphoria.
I see. I think that's a lovely idea, actually. And I like the sort of punk idea. I do think that we, and I count myself among us, on the gender critical side, can, like in any sort of tribe, lose track of the human, of the individual liberty and the idea. And I know like Helen Pluckrose is really good with this kind of thing. I really like her, the idea, and she gets a lot of criticism, but that, look, if it's not affecting people, if it's not,
if it's not harming someone else.
Since when did we become the people who we saw ourselves as these kind of lefty liberals years ago, or like the individual liberty? Since when did we become these people going, "Oh, he's got a fetish, I'm not happy about that"? As long as it doesn't affect other people. The issue is, of course, it is on some levels affecting people with changing rooms. I don't know what.
Yeah, and I think we should get back to that because it might be.
Okay, so actually the changing room thing is dumb because the changing room is you get your own fucking little room. You get your own, you close the door, your changing room, right? I don't know if they mean like at the store where you're trying on clothes or whatever. Like, but that's like you close the door. You're not like trying on clothes with people. You bring a friend in with you if you want. If you're like, "Hey, I want you to actually does this bra look okay on me?" Or, there might be reasons you might want to bring a friend. But like these are these are places where there's a bunch of them side by side, and we walk into a place, you go and you pick, maybe there's an attendant there that tells you, "Oh, go to changing room 3 because I know that one's open," or whatever like that. But if they mean like locker rooms, well, most of the time, I don't think people strip naked in locker rooms anyway. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know what they're talking about.
At gyms, a lot of people strip naked in the locker room.
Well, I'm not really a gym bunny, but in any case, like people are there, like They just want to fucking change, cop a shower, and get the fuck out of there, right? Because they're done working out. They have somewhere else. They have somewhere else to be. Most people in there just are. It's like when you go to a public bathroom. You want to go in there, take a piss. Hopefully, you just have to take a piss. Because I don't know about you, but but you just want to go in there, you do your business, wash your hands, and leave, right? Like people are. I'm not there to make friends. I'm not there to inspect anybody else's body. And I think that a locker room, for the most part, is the same way.
And the idea that like someone saying, well, your presence makes me feel uncomfortable in this room, so you need to remove yourself from this room, that strikes me as just being wrong. It should be the other way around. If my presence makes you feel uncomfortable in a space, then you should remove yourself from that space.
And I mean, it's going to be these are going to be things where it's like based on the situation. But again, generally, like in a bathroom or like a locker room or whatever, I just think most people are there to like fucking in the locker room to like change, maybe cop a quick shower and get the fuck out, right? Or in a bathroom, you're just there to do your business and get out, right? You're not trying to, it's not a social call, right? Like, if you're at the gym with friends or whatever, you might be chatting it up in the gym with friends or whatever, but then just fucking leave the other people in the fucking at the locker room alone. Like, I don't understand. Like, and definitely at a gym, there's not open showers. You're not just open showering at a gym. Gyms are nice. They're expensive. Well,
it depends on the gym, but yeah, most gyms have separate shower stalls, right?
Yeah. Why wouldn't they?
Well, I think there are some gyms that have like big shared showers, but don't those gyms usually also have separate shower stalls? So
I don't know. I am not an expert on this. I'm just telling you that like the gyms are generally like they're competing for clientele, right, with other gyms. And so you're going to want to go to the one that has the nicer locker room and showers, and that's going to be all things being equal, you're going to sign up for the one that has the shower stalls that you can close. Like it's a competitive industry.
That question,
Okay.
We just had a nice segue. I think if you start talking sport, prisons, changing rooms, rape refuges, 3 out of 4 of them, I've got a very clear line that I'm on the gender critical side.
Okay.
If you can pick and select sound bites of me from 2 to 6, 10 years ago, and you'll find me having a different opinion. And I spent some time working in the prison sector, so I've been to about 50 UK prisons, and people in prisons would often come and ask me, Katie, we've got some trans people. Do you know what we should do with them? Because this was before they had rules about what they should do with them. And I said, well, what are you doing with them now? That seems to work. Carry on. But that was a fudge. We fudged for many years until they came up with these PSIs, prison service instructions, to tell the governors what to do. And then when they brought those PSIs, those rules in, they actually, again, similarly actually to the Equality Act with the transgender protections, transitioning protections, people erred on the side of inclusion, erred on the side of caution, erred on the side of kindness. And
In what sense?
well, in the sense that the Equality Act always had room for exception and exemption, and people actually went down the be kind side and inclusion over exemption.
Of trans people.
Of trans people, yes.
But that's not kind to a young
Yeah, I
woman
know,
who
but-
feels vulnerable.
Yeah, but that was the bit. As I said, that's the bit that had been forgotten.
I see.
And I think that's why the gender critical.
So
debate has
again,
been a health-
if a trans person being in a space makes you uncomfortable, that's a you problem.
Right. And okay, the prison thing is fraught, but the reason that it's fraught is, and I'm sure it's not just a US problem, prisons are violent, and the prison system does next to nothing to change the systems, just systemically change the culture in the prisons. So a trans woman going into a prison full of men is going to be a victim of violence, sexual violence, likely. Trans woman going to a prison full of women, also likely to be a victim of violence, possibly sexual, possibly physical, possibly both. The problem there isn't the trans person. The problem there is that the United States and other countries just throw people into prison and then just be like, well, if they get beat up in there, I guess that's just because they're in prison and they're bad and they deserve it. And so the solution here is a larger systemic issue with just violence in prisons. And I don't have the answers here. But it would, it's going to prison is terrifying, I would assume. And being a trans person going into prison is probably even much more terrifying because you have no idea what's about to happen. You have no idea where you're going to be, what the people are going to be like, how you're going to be treated, how you're going to be treated by the guards. Like if you're like a cis person, you have some reference point of what's going to happen because you can read books by people who've been to different kinds of prisons and different levels of security and whatnot. And you can get information about their experiences. If you have pretrial release, you might even be able to talk to, if you have like a probation officer or somebody like that and be like, hey, what am I going to expect in there? What should I do? Somebody might be able to tell you, it's just like things like, observe, like take a good look around before you start opening your mouth and doing things. It's like the same thing as like, if you go to a new bar or whatever, it's just the temperature's turned up in a lot of ways and there's no booze.
And also we should say that like this idea of like having changing room patrols or bathroom patrols, it hurts cis people too. Like not only does it hurt trans people because you end up with a trans woman in the men's bathroom, which is wrong, or a trans man in the woman's bathroom, which is wrong. It hurts cis people too because you get a bunch of nosy Nellies going around, asking people like, hey, do you belong in this bathroom? And like someone might just be a little androgynous, they might be a cis woman that doesn't look exactly like how everyone expects a cis woman to look like. And you end up with someone coming up to them and saying, hey, you're in the wrong bathroom. And it hurts everyone.
Right.
Like
that's how bigotry works.
Yeah, exactly. This
like,
kind of bigotry hurts everyone.
It's like the example I give when I talk about this is like I was out in high school. My friend Ben was a theater kid. People would have guessed he was gay probably before me, and he was subject to more homophobic abuse than I was, even though I was out and gay. And that's crazy. And so, yeah, somebody in chat just called them transvestigators. Yeah, you get a woman, get a woman who's didn't put on a bunch of makeup and is just wearing like jeans, like 501s and a t-shirt and doesn't have large breasts or whatever. Yeah, she might get transvestigated on her way to fucking go take a shit. And like, first of all, nobody wants to take a shit in the public bathroom anyway. But now you're getting transvestigated on your way in. It's like, yo, this is the worst thing that's happened to me in a month. Like, fuck you.
So like now you've inconvenienced an entire, minority of people. And then you've also inconvenienced people that you didn't even intend to, It's like a shotgun approach to bigotry.
It's, they would call it collateral damage.
Yep. Healthy debate in many respects, but it's a healthy need for discussion because we have to. In certain situations, we have to reset the balance, and we have to rebalance. Therefore, the idea that there are competing groups here, and it's not like giving women the vote and men losing 50% of their kind of democratic equity. When you're giving trans people access, you are impacting women, and the women aren't like men with the vote who are losing a bit of power. They're women who had to fight to get what they got, fight to get women's sports, to fight to get single sex spaces. And this is where I think there's been a lack of empathy from some trans activists to recognize that women fought to get what they want, and now you just want to identify into that space.
Wait, women fought to get
very astute.
Single sex bathrooms?
I guess so. I mean, it used to be they just peed on the street.
Well, it used to be we had no sex bathrooms. It was just a single bathroom that one person would go in at a time.
Astute point, and especially given it was men that were sort of oppressing those women and taking those rights away, and then on the gender critical side, we would say it's still men who are trying to take
Obviously,
the rights.
We're only talking in most of the gender critical argument. There's actually two completely different arguments about the gender critical argument against men becoming women, people, or Tim's trans identity.
Well, like also they're completely ignoring the existence of trans men. Like this would affect trans men too. It would force trans men to go into the women's bathroom, which is not a place where they belong.
trans. I'm actually identify as trans. You know, you said let's get a trans woman on. I
Sure.
actually don't identify as a trans woman.
Interesting.
I would have done in 2018.
Okay.
Now I would say I'm a trans person.
Trans person.
And you know, I often get introduced on TV or radio, or even to a friend. This is Katie, my trans friend, or this is Katie, she's a trans woman, or this is my female friend Katie. I don't correct people. That is my choice.
Wait, who says this is my female friend Katie? You got some weird friends, or this is just some hipster coffee shop shit happening here, friends. Like, this is my. I introduced you to fucking the media wench. I'm like, hey, this is my female friend Ashley, HK.
People will say you should every time say no, but I'm a man. You should out yourself. Of course they know who I am. Of course they know I'm male. There's no pretend in that sense. I'm not pretending. But if somebody wants to include me, I'm not going to exclude myself.
Although I understand that.
So, but that's a politeness in both senses, because otherwise you're almost embarrassing your friend as well. The majority of my friends are more the majority of my female friends are more trans inclusive than I am. In that sense,
I'm sure.
So
I bet they're less knowledgeable though as well.
But I debate with them till I'm blue in the tooth. But I think this goes back to the fact that there are different waves of feminism. You know, we're on wave 4, but if you also just Google the word feminism, you'll find my last count, there's 72 of them. And that's just the ones that I could enumerate. And so when someone says they're a feminist to me, I go, which one?
Yeah.
Because what do you mean by that? Because you ask the average student age feminist, they would say absolutely trans women are women, and absolutely our intersectional feminism, and Kimberly Crenshaw coined the phrase intersectional in that sense, and she includes trans in that. So, but other feminists don't. So which is the true feminist?
Yeah.
And
or which is the true trans?
Well, exactly.
Saying,
you get the
what?
younger feminists saying actually that gender critical feminists.
You know what? I can't take any more of this. Fuck it. I can't take any more of this. This is fucking. I just can't take any more of this. I'm sorry. I'm fucking like annoyed, and I've never been annoyed and bored at the same time, but I'm annoyed and bored.
That was a very odd conversation.
Very, very weird. There was like some get off my lawn, old school trans, like old school kind of like gay culture shit there that I don't like.
Yep.
So there's a couple things.
I feel like
oh, go ahead.
I feel like a lot of that was this. Basically, she was saying, I don't feel the way that these other people say they feel, so they're wrong.
That's possible. Yeah, there's some of that going on, and also there might be
being trans wrong.
There might be some desire. There might be some desire. This person might be like conservative on a lot of issues. You know what I'm saying? They might be like sort of interested in like the IDW in a way. I'm just speculating here, and there might be a little bit of desire to be accepted by this group of people who shares
might be a pick me.
Maybe their views on, you know, things like maybe race and IQ or whatever. And like somebody in chat just said, I probably wouldn't use this word, but it's like a pick me, you know, because they want to be included. And all in all, that was frustrating. And I'm glad we're done listening to it, and we're not going to listen to any more of it during the post game. Andrew Gold keeps getting worse. I don't know. A lot of people who I've talked to in looking into what's going on in the anti-Scientology community right now, even people who tend to be more, maybe not more more conservative than me, right? Maybe not conservatives, but people who I would say are like sort of moderate, probably vote for Democrats, but aren't like leftists or whatever. Even those people bring him up to me. They're like, this guy. They're like, you figured that guy out immediately. They're like, why were you able to figure him out immediately? And, you know, I, for example, went on his show, and I'm like, well, because you are just so entrenched in this Scientology shit that you couldn't see the forest for the trees. Like, you need like a broader view. It's just like how we clocked Brett Weinstein way ahead of him going fucking full potato during the COVID thing. It's like, because we have a broader view of the world than just this one sort of niche thing. You know, I talk about like local news on Tuesdays, and I talk about the Satanic Panic on Thursdays, and conspiracy theories on Fridays. And we went back to playing more cat videos on Catterday, which is good. And I do a news show, and I blog, and I'm interested in open source. Like I feel like when you have tunnel vision, it makes it really hard to see when somebody's a giant piece of shit because they're just with you on this one subject. And I feel like maybe the guest on this show has that tunnel vision and is interested in like these sort of heterodox or whatever, for lack of ideas. I bet this person was COVID vaccine critical. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that I don't know anything about this person, but I'm just guessing as to what might be going on here, and that this person wants to be accepted in this community. Even though she said that she was accepted by the queer community, like from the time she came out, it seems like, I don't know. Anyway, do you want to read this show out?
All right. This has been the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you want to check out our other shows, you can do that at echoplexmedia.com, and you can support us both at patreon.com/Echoplex and at eplex.store, where you can buy our merch and support us with a membership. If you're listening live, stick around for after the song when we change the color of the lights and the contents of our drinks. If you are listening on the podcast, then this has been the Intellectual Dollar Tree. And this is Boomers by Periscope.